Right, Cameron, welcome to the show. Really happy to talk to you today about ads. So for the people who don't know you, why don't you just tell them what you do in a summary form?
Okay, yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on, first and foremost. My name's Cameron Scott. I've been a merch on demand seller since about 5 years now, so 2018. And I'm the founder of MerchJar, which is an Amazon advertising automation and management platform. That's pretty much what I do these days.
Okay, cool. And just to get people interested and to sort of give some proof as to why they should listen to you, 2 questions. What was your lowest ever BSR on a merch t-shirt?
Okay, lowest ever BSR. I don't know what the exact BSR, because obviously it changes pretty frequently. The lowest I saw it at was this past December. It was sub 200, like 180, 190.
200. I was thinking maybe 1,000, which is already crazy, but okay, 200. And the second question is, what was your highest sale day in terms of, whether it's royalties or amount of sales?
The highest sales day, also this last December, it's kind of grown every year. So this last December was my best month ever. My highest day was about 7,700 in royalties.
Wow, that was pretty neat. One day.
One day.
Beats my December almost. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So the first question I have there, which I've always wondered with, high sort of ad performers, because a lot of that I'm guessing is due to ads or the help of ads. Are these numbers only possible in really competitive niches, like whether it's teacher or you're targeting dads, or can you do that? Can you get to that level in smaller niches that are lower competition?
I don't know if it's as related to high competition as it is to just like search volume and the traffic.
Yeah.
Now, of course, with that search volume and traffic tends to competition tends to follow that as well.
Yeah.
So it's in general, you're going to have high competition in order to reach those kinds of numbers with a few designs. Now, I will say that it is possible to reach those numbers if your sales are spread out along a much bigger portfolio. So it really depends on your portfolio makeup. I am consolidated, at least for my sales, in a few really big designs that bring in 80% plus of my sales out of all the, thousands of listings that I do have. So for me, it is really concentrated, and those are in extremely high niches. So if you are in trying to do this with just a handful of products, it is probably going to be extremely competitive to hit those kinds of numbers.
So those best sellers that you have then, are they in competitive niches with like lots of search results?
Yes. Yeah, they are in some of the biggest niches. My biggest selling shirt is in what I'd call the dad niche, which has tons of competition around it. Also, tons of traffic too. We're getting into Father's Day coming up, so it's a big gift-giving holiday for dads, and also performs around Christmas too. Just any kind. It's a giftable sort of design. So, but yes, extremely high competition. It's competing with the biggest sellers on merch on demand at this point. In December, when I had that lowest BSR, I actually had, through the month of December, or most of it anyways, the top selling merch on demand t-shirt on the entire platform.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Which is pretty easy to track because you can see exactly what merch. It wasn't the best selling t-shirt. I'm not claiming that, because there's some other FBM, FBA sellers that have some pretty heavy hitters, but in the category of novelty t-shirts, merch on demand, it was the best seller across the whole platform, at least for a few weeks in December.
Wow. So I'm guessing that was the first time you reached that. So the pinnacle of Amazon merch.
That, yes. As far as like being like number one for sure. Otherwise, it has the last couple of years, it has competed. Probably a couple of years ago is when my first big holiday sales season, when it finally hit the number of reviews needed. Like there's a certain threshold to even be able to compete at those levels for the most part. Like if you go to look at the top 100 designs, most of those are going to have at least hundreds of reviews, if not thousands of reviews. You're not going to see very many that are, have none or a couple dozen reviews. It's like you need a certain threshold, because the more reviews, it's just going to help I have that social proof. More people are going to buy it. The conversion rate's higher. It's a bit of a necessity to really climb those rankings.
It's not something that you can build up to in a month or two, is what you're saying. Like it takes
not generally. No. It's more of a the life cycle of a product is really more of a years long process. This isn't like an instant thing. But I would say for most products to reach a maturity of what they are capable of doing, you're probably looking at 3 years, if not more in some cases, depending on the competition. And any of these really high competitive niches where you are competing against designs that already have 3, 4, 5,000 reviews, it does take even longer versus if a new, I don't know, hot trend or something comes up and it's a brand new niche, a lot of search traffic starts getting to it, you can probably compete with a lot lower reviews. So it's a little bit of what the competition has as far as like that threshold. But those top 100 designs, you're going to look at them, it's going to be thousands of reviews to really hit that. But yeah, it started hitting its stride a couple years ago and it's just climbed as it's accumulated more reviews. Ads have gotten more optimized, more sales history.
So as it's been climbing then, have you kept increasing the ad spend for that product?
Yeah, ad spend's gone up every year for sure. And part of that is just a function of it growing in sales. It indexes on more search terms, so it has the ability to spend more just in broader reach. The other side of that too is just advertising costs have gone up. The average cost per click has gone up tremendously over the last couple of years. I don't have the exact numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 50% higher than what I was spending 2 years ago just on a cost per click basis. As far as like actual dollars I'm spending, this December was fairly higher than the previous December. And the royalties didn't necessarily have that same like linear
increase. No.
Increase, yeah.
Down, aren't they? So yeah, that's kind of counteracting the ad spend going up, royalties going down. But so I'm guessing that a lot of those campaigns, if you are running multiple, will be product targeting and targeting specific search phrases. So my question there would be, how do you actually choose your targets for your manual campaigns?
So for advertising specifically, I don't really choose my own targets. They sort of choose me, and I do this through more of a harvesting strategy. So pretty much any campaign or any product I'm going to start advertising for, I'm starting with an automatic campaign, and I'm letting Amazon choose those keywords and product targets for me. And especially for product targets, they're great. It's a lot harder to find exactly. There's just so many products on Amazon, right? Like it's hard to pick out certain ones. I'm letting Amazon do all that work. Now, of course, like before that even happens, for Amazon to know what to even show your product for, there is keyword research that goes on behind the scenes. So that's going to come from, I mean, this is a pretty extensive topic as far as like just keyword research. Like we could talk for hours about just that, but using tools like a Helium 10, specifically their Cerebro tool, like a reverse ASIN tool to find what other products are ranking for organically, using those in your titles, descriptions, if you have A+ content, back-end keywords. Of course, it depends on the platform that you're selling on, what you have available. But the general strategy with that is to index for as many possible search terms as you can. If you don't index for them, you don't get traffic for them, you don't have that ability to convert as sales. So if you're indexing for something, you get more search term traffic. And it's a lot easier to increase your search term traffic to increase sales than to increase like your conversion rate, for example. It's a lot easier to double search your traffic than double your conversion rate if you're trying to double your sales.
So if I understand that correctly, you mean you have to fill out your listing with as many high-value keywords as you can to be indexed in lots and lots of different search terms, then run an auto campaign to find sort of the best performing search phrases or products. And then you go ahead and create a manual campaign. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that pretty much sums it up. Using relevant keywords. Of course, you don't want just like off-the-wall ones, but I do see a lot of people worrying about like keyword stuffing and so forth. I don't really care about that. Like do what you can get away with and it makes sense. The real goal is just index for as much as possible as you can. I mean, you'd be surprised, especially once you start running ads, you look at your search term reports, you will be completely surprised in what will sell for your product. Even if it's at a low conversion rate, you can adjust around that with just lower bids. You're going to sell on a lot more search terms than you would ever possibly think of.
Yeah.
And that's why you want to, again, have that breadth across your search term. But yeah, that's kind of how that whole thing starts. But Amazon's going to take it a step further with auto ads. And that's another good way to just let the algorithm do its thing. You got to kind of seed it with those good keywords. So if you don't go like super extensive stuff you're listing, you just have like the really good like main ones. Amazon's still going to do a fairly good job of just spreading it out, see what works. It takes time, of course. And then from there, yeah, I'm going to use a manual campaign. What's selling from my automatic campaign, I'm going to move into my manual campaigns. And this is like a really important something to learn with advertising. Is it's more of you're building a campaign structure to facilitate sales. It's not just, okay, I'm throwing up an auto campaign and I'm going to create a manual campaign, come up with some keywords. You're building a structure, and it acts really as a funnel where your auto campaign and your manual campaign, like broad match keywords, act as harvesting, as like a harvesting component for your other more higher performance to find what's going to work best for your product.
Spreading a broad net to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're casting a net to see what you can catch, and then you're going to. My typical structure that I look for is, so I have my harvesting, and that's going to be primarily auto campaign. I'd consider some of the broader match manual campaign or keywords in a manual campaign part of that harvesting. And then I'm going to move those into a testing phase. So I'm taking those search terms generally as like an exact match, and I'm going to test them out to see. I'm going to throw more budget. I'm going to target those specifically. And if they do really well, I'm going to move them into a performance category. And how exactly you structure this, there's just tons of different ways. You could have a separate campaign for each one. A really easy method would just be like have a testing campaign with several different ad groups in it. One for broad match, exact, phrase, product targets. And then you have another separate performance campaign, same kind of thing. So you just sort of move them down the line, down that funnel as you test them out and make sure they're working for you. And the reason we do this is because we want the stuff that is working really well, we want to amplify. We want to have bigger bids, higher budgets, so we can really focus on what's working. I mean, you want to pour gasoline on what's working with Amazon ads. That's the basic strategy. If you want to look at just like, what's the basic strategy of Amazon ads? How do I look at this? Take what's working, amplify it, take what isn't working, and reduce it or eliminate it. That's the gist of Amazon.
Okay. There's two questions that came to mind there while I explain that. First of all, for the newer Amazon ads sellers, or users, a lot of this probably sounds really confusing. So one question would be, how do you easily find the good performing search terms and then implement them in a manual campaign?
Well, easily, I mean, they give it to you in your search term report. So this is going to be, you can go right into Ad Console now. So your Amazon advertising console, when I say Ad Console, it's just the one Amazon gives you, where most people are going to spend their time that are new to advertising. And you have to go down to the ad group level. So you click on a campaign, that's going to give you your ad groups. And you click on ad group, and there'll be a section that says search terms. So they're actually going to tell you what people search. So that's the difference between keyword and search term. That's a distinction to know. A search term is what a customer is typing into the Amazon search bar to find your product. A keyword is different. A keyword determines what search terms your ad is going to show up for. It's what search terms get targeted or products get targeted for it. So like a broad match keyword is going to target thousands of different search terms. So that's the difference. But yeah, they're going to show you right in Ad Console your search terms. When you get a little more advanced, you're going to jump into the report section of Amazon advertising. So it's going to give it to you in spreadsheet format. And then it's a matter of sorting and filtering to find stuff that's working and converting at a decent rate. But usually when you're starting and testing stuff, like once you get a couple orders on a search terms, definitely worth testing out as an exact match, or if it's really relevant to your product, you can start as a broad match or phrase match. So a lot of different things to test, but overall just test everything.
Yeah. So technically, you could download that as an Excel, as a spreadsheet, and then order it by ACOS, I guess, and pick out some of the lowest ACOS search terms and put them into.
Yeah, I tend to start by orders because it's not even necessarily by ACOS, because you can have something, say, from a auto campaign, because with an auto campaign or these broad match, you have one bid, and that bid's being used across all the search terms that it's targeting. So if you have something that's got, say, 4 or 5 orders, but an ACOS of 60, 70%, it doesn't mean you don't necessarily want to target that or you want to negate that search term. Okay. It may just need a lower bid and it can still perform really well.
I never thought of it that way. I would have probably ignored that, even though it has sales. Yeah, that's interesting. So, and the other question that came to mind there is, once you've set up the actual manually targeted campaigns, do you then turn the auto campaigns off so they don't interfere with each other, or?
I don't. I always have an auto campaign running because you never really want to stop harvesting. There's always going to be new search terms. There's especially going to be new products that can be targeted. I constantly have an auto campaign running. And for my best sellers, I actually have multiple auto campaigns. And the reason for that is this is maybe a little more advanced. For new sellers, like just start with one auto campaign and leave it at that. But if you have a product that is selling 5-10 units a day, you do want to be a little more diverse in how you're approaching your advertising, but having one campaign for each automatic targeting group. So that's like when you go deep into the campaign, your loose match, close match, substitutes, complements. I'll have a different campaign for each of those in order to utilize the placement adjustments appropriately for those. And this is, again, more advanced, but placement adjustments happen at the campaign level. So anything you do at the campaign level, the placement adjustment gets applied to everything in it, every ad group, every keyword. So it's really just segmenting those out so you can be as granular as possible. And there's some other things too I maybe don't want to get into, just how like attribution and stuff works. But
so you
can get more granular as you get more, as you scale your campaigns with additional auto campaigns and so forth. But I'm always going to leave those running. I think your question was like those auto campaigns competing with yourself.
So the reason I'm asking that question is because I have some auto campaigns which are doing really well. And what I did is take some of the search terms from that auto campaign, put it in a manual campaign. And what seems to have happened is the manuals were doing okay, maybe not amazing. And at the same time, the auto campaigns started doing worse. So in the end, I just thought maybe they're competing against each other.
I mean, you do see this a lot where something will be working great in one campaign where the manual auto, and you move it to another campaign and it just doesn't get traction for whatever reason. It doesn't get impressions, or it performs much worse. They're not so much interfering with each other. A lot of it could just do with like sales history. Amazon really likes sales history with campaigns, or any other reason that we don't know because no one really knows how the algorithm works. So even when you have something selling really well and from an auto campaign, you want to stick it in a manual, whatever, and it doesn't, it just happens sometimes. And for that reason, I'm a big proponent of, if something's working, don't mess with it. So like in an auto campaign, let it keep going until at least, if you're going to negate it, make sure it's working first in the new campaign. There is the concept of search term isolation, which is where you want to isolate search terms like from your auto campaign, so you'd get those into eventually like your performance, so with huge budgets and bids, so you can target that specific search term, and you would negate it everywhere else so that all of your data is in one campaign. That's the only real benefit I see to that, is to have all of your data in one place, all of your sales data, and maybe from a management perspective of your ads. Otherwise, it's not really, you're not competing against yourself in the sense of like you're driving your own bids up, for example, which is a really common question I get. Well, I don't want to have 2 campaigns targeting the same thing because I'm just competing against myself. Amazon doesn't let you do that. And this is something that's pretty easily testable. If anyone doesn't want to take my word for it and you do want to test it yourself, is just take 2 different campaigns and you could have a different product in each one, same product, whatever you want, and target the same search term. If you want to be on the safe side, just do one that doesn't get maybe tons of traffic and clicks. And you could set a $5 bid on both of those campaigns. And if Amazon let you compete against yourself, they would just, keep increasing until you eventually hit your max bid of $5. But you won't see that. You'll still see, whatever bid based on the competition, all the other factors for that search term that you're targeting. So they don't let you compete against each other in that sense. It's okay to have campaigns targeting the same keywords, even in different, for different products, it's fine. Again, it's really just more from like a data perspective, having things consolidated into a single campaign for like sales history and just ease of management. Otherwise, I don't do that. I don't negate stuff, especially with like that funnel, that structure that I mentioned where it goes from, I'll move it from auto campaign to a testing campaign to a performance. I'm really not negating in any of those unless they start performing badly in the other campaigns.
Okay. And when you say negating, you mean negative keyword targeting?
Negative keyword. So that would be, for anyone that's not familiar with negative keywords, it's the opposite of a keyword. It's where you're telling Amazon, don't target this specific keyword, either as an exact match or a phrase match.
Yeah, that brings me into my next question as well, which is how should people, or what ways are there for people to actually optimize their campaigns?
As far as like mechanically, like there's a few ways, like if we're talking about like mechanically, or if we're talking about like best practices, mechanically, there's several different ways. You can go right into Ad Console. If you only have a few campaigns, this is probably fine. You got to click through a lot of your stuff to really make any changes. That's fine if you have a few campaigns. The next option would be like your bulk operations. So this is where you can download a spreadsheet of all your different campaigns, make changes in bulk. If you're really comfortable with spreadsheets, this is probably okay. Depending on what you're trying to do, you might need to get into like pivot tables and things like that. You can get fairly advanced depending on the sort of data you're trying to analyze. And I know a lot of people do have an aversion to spreadsheets. And there's even platforms like KDP that don't have bulk operations as an option. So their only option is pretty much Ad Console, which does have its limitations, or it's just the way it's laid out. There's a lot of clicking. And then there's tools like MerchJar where it simplifies that process, or even automates a lot of those tedious tasks that have to be done. If we're talking about best practices, which I don't know which one you're referring to, but I'll just touch on both. Probably one of the best things you should do as far as like best practice for like, how do I optimize my campaign the best? The first thing you should do is set a target ACoS. So ACoS is your advertising cost of sale. It basically tells you how profitable your ads are. And without a target, you're sort of just flying blind. But having a target ACoS, it's sort of a barometer to how well your ads are doing. If they're below, or we'll start, if they're well above, your ACoS is well above what your target is, they're really unprofitable, they're not performing well. That gives you information on what you need to do, typically lowering bids, lowering budgets. And if it's too low, so let's say you have an ACoS of 25% and your ACoS is only 10 or 15%, they're performing really well. And you would think it's like, well, they're overperforming. It's like, actually, you're probably leaving money on the table. You're underinvesting. So that's another direction. You want to get it just right to that target ACoS. But that's why you're setting a target ACoS first, so that it's giving you direction on what to do. So even if it's too low, you can invest more in those ads to get more sales, increase your ranking even more than just taking profit. So that's the first step, is determining what your target ACoS is. For anybody new, I recommend a break-even ACoS. Unprofitable ads, you're not losing money, you're not making money, you're just breaking even on them. And this is really just to increase, for one, get sales history with your campaigns, get sales history with your product to lead to more reviews, and most importantly, increase your ranking to increase organic sales. Most of the sales come at the top of the ranking, so you want to climb up the ladder as much as possible.
What is that roughly for like a $19.99 shirt, the ACoS?
I don't know. After they changed the pricing, I think that's around 24%. I've moved my pricing up to $21.99 for my bigger sellers, which is I think 28% break even ACoS. And depending on the ACoS is again sort of what your goal is. Again, for most new people, break even. For some of my best sellers, my target ACoS is even higher than what my break-even ACoS is, especially if I'm like trying to steal sales from my direct competitors. I'm willing to lose money on those ads to take sales for them, for example. So it's really more of what your goal is. And as your product matures, you already have tons of reviews. Maybe you can start to lower that target ACoS to become directly profitable with your ads. But for me, that's not really the goal of advertising, to be profitable with ad specific. It's more of looking at it as a holistic picture.
Okay. And any other practices, like specific things that you do in the ad console to optimize rather than just lowering and upping bids?
That's going to be your primary. You have so many levers, right, that you can adjust your bids with. Your optimizing your bids is going to be your primary one. I will say that one of the best practices for optimizing your bids, do it on a regular basis. One of the things that like ads are not set it and forget it. You can't just set a bid and expect that to always work. It's always changing on a daily basis even. Worst case, I'd say once a week, you should be going through and optimizing all of your bids, just making those small adjustments based on what the current performance is versus what your target performance is. So again, that's like, if it's hot, your ACoS is high, I'm going to lower the bid a little bit. And it's making small adjustments at a time. It's not making 50% drastic changes. I prefer daily changes of 2-3% at a time. Again, this is easy if you're using a tool to make that simpler, you're automating that function. If you're not, you're doing it manually, I'd say once a week with no more than a 10-15% adjustment at a time. That's going to be your primary. Otherwise, like those campaign structures I was referring to earlier, setting up those sorts of campaign structures and moving those keywords along. This is, again, a lot of manual work, but that's the work with Amazon ads. There's always something more you can do.
Just one thing there, when you say worst case, once a week, you look at your data and you make adjustments, are you looking at the past 7 days performance then? Or are you looking at longer time frames?
This really depends on how much data you have to work with. Yeah. So if you don't have the data within 7 days, especially if these are new campaigns or you only have like 1 order or 2 orders a month, you can't really look at the last 7 days because you don't have enough data. So the date range is really going to be more of a function on how much data you have. So if you have something that's selling all the time, you're getting 4, 5, 6 orders a week from your ads, last 7 days is great. I want to have at least 2 points of data, which ACoS is my primary metric that I'm looking at when it comes to bid adjustments. I want to have at least 2 orders to, determine what that ACoS is. And the more data, the better. So if you don't have at least that, you need to look at a larger date range. You may need to look at 60 days if your ads aren't spending a ton to get those orders and clicks.
So the more sales you're getting with ads, the shorter the time frame can be where you look at data. If you're not getting any sales, you have to go 30 days, 2 months, whatever.
Yeah, you really have to go back. But ideally, you do want to be able to use as short of a date range as possible because that's going to be the most recent, most relevant data. Again, if the data isn't there, you have to look at a longer date range. That's another advantage of spending more and being more aggressive in your ads is you get more data to work with. And that's all Amazon advertising is using the data that you're investing in and using that to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you mentioned Merge Jar there as a way to automate that process or make it easier. So for people who don't know Merge Jar and what it does, how does it actually help people?
Okay. So, as Amazon sellers, we have a lot to juggle, right? As the advertising I've talked about, doing effective advertising is just a massive chore. So Merge Jar simplifies the advertising process. We automate a lot of these tedious tasks so that you have more time to focus on what really matters to you. And those tasks are going to be things like the bid adjustments. It's going to make the bid adjustments for you based on the data that you have. So even like date ranges, if you're going to go into Ad Console and you have to constantly change date ranges, or even worse, if you're using bulk operations, where you actually have to generate the report for each different date range, that takes a lot of time, where Merge Jar handles all of that for you. It's going to use shorter date ranges and look at shorter windows of time if you have the data available. If you don't, it's going to back that up to 14 days or 30 days. And then there's different adjustments you can do with that. As far as like the campaign structures I've talked about, moving those keywords from one campaign to another, it's hugely time consuming to do manually. It's super important. So it's something you need to be doing, but it handles that whole process for you as well as the negation side of things too. So when you have search terms that are getting clicks, draining your budget, and not converting into sales, it's going to negate those automatically for you. So your budget goes further.
So like another way of optimizing then. So if I get that right, MerchJar integrates with your ads console and it can literally like move keywords around between campaigns.
Yeah, exactly. We use the Amazon advertising API. So all of your advertising data syncs. So there's automations like that handle those adjustments that'll pause keywords or campaigns that aren't performing. And all of it's customizable too. You can set whatever parameters you want to have with the automation. So it's all completely tailored to what your goals are, especially for more advanced sellers that have specific functions or data that they look at. And the other side of it too is just we've streamlined how easy it is to make changes to your bids. So you can see all of your keywords in one table and make changes to every single keyword in one go. You don't have to use spreadsheets. Or for like our merch on demand or KDP sellers that have a huge portfolios and maybe they're taking advantage of lottery campaigns that you might have thousands and thousands of ASINs to list in those. Ad console only lets you add 1,000 ads at a time to a single ad group. If you got 500,000 ASINs you're trying to list, if you're fortunate to be in some of those higher tiers and have that problem, that can be a really tedious time issue. We have a function where you can add hundreds of thousands of ASINs to multiple ad groups in a couple clicks, for example.
Oh, wow.
So there's just a lot of time-saving tools. The whole goal of MerchJar is to save time so you can focus on what matters to you, whether that's creating new products or even just achieving some work-life balance and spending more time with the family. It's taking out that tedious portion of Amazon ads that is super important. You need to do it. You got to stay on top of it because Amazon ads is changing. You always have new competitors. The bids change of what works, what doesn't. So that's the whole goal, is just saving time, save hours per month, and put it towards
I'm guessing
stuff.
it makes the data easier to understand as well because, like you said before, the ads console is not very great, as we know.
It is organized differently from a data perspective. So a lot of our users find it a lot easier to digest and get an overview. We have even custom dashboards you can set up. So you can actually, again, tailor the information to exactly what you need at the time you need it.
It's a bit like, it sounds to me like Pretty Merch just for ads, make the dashboard prettier, make things easier, bulk actions. And you actually solved one of my later questions there. Someone in my Discord server asked, is there another way to export ASINs in bulk for a lottery campaign because of that stupid limit of 1,000? So that's really cool that you have that function because, I've got so many ASINs. I would like to put them all into a campaign, but I would never do it manually. It's just...
it is tedious. And it's a lot of the functions and features we've built into MerchJar is because of my own frustrations. It's why I started MerchJar in the first place, is there was no solution out there that worked for the issues that we as merch sellers have. And one of it's just scale. We're on a just completely different scale than almost any other Amazon seller that's not at an enterprise level. No other seller has thousands of listings, let alone tens of thousands or even into the millions at the higher tiers. It's just on a different level for that. And as far as like the exporting ASINs, we even have a Chrome extension as well to pull all of your merch on demand products to get those into an easy list to import into all the ad groups that you need. So it makes lottery campaigns a lot easier to get spun up and start testing, because lottery campaigns are fantastic, especially for new sellers. It's probably the first campaign I would start if you have a portfolio of at least a couple dozen products.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that question then. How should someone who's new to ads, who doesn't have a high budget because they're not really getting many sales yet, how should they approach ads?
Depending on the seller, so if you're merch on demand, KDP, you probably have the portfolio to justify lottery campaigns. That's probably where I would start. They're pretty low risk. You can start with low budgets, low bids, and really get your feet wet in testing the waters, and they can perform really well at a profitable ACoS, if that's what you're looking for, without putting too much risk on the table. Outside of that, I would start with your best-selling ASINs, 1, 2, whatever that looks like. This really depends on what your budget is. When I think of Amazon ads, there's really 2 main activities you can take. There's expansion activities, which means growing your spend. You're increasing your budgets, you're increasing bids. You're going to be spending more on your ads. And then there's contraction activities. So these are other optimizations like lowering your bids, lowering your budgets, adding negative keywords to optimize your campaigns, versus the expansion of when you're adding keywords, you're increasing your spend that way because you're testing additional targets. So it really, when it comes to, or products, and the other way to look at this would be products. So starting with your couple best sellers, and if you have the budget, start adding even, more products to start ads for. And you can start just with an auto campaign for each one. So start with 1, 2, 3, depending, your comfort level, your risk tolerance. And as you get a feel for that, see how they're spending, you can start increasing those bids, adding new products with additional campaigns, start those manual products. So it's really a slower growth, and you don't have to be super aggressive. If you're want to be conservative, you're just starting with low bids, lower budget. But the biggest thing is just get started. Stop worrying about the little stuff. What's the right bid to start with? What's the right budget? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what that is, because you're going to be optimizing that and changing that anyways. There is no right one. No one has the answer for you, because your products are different than anyone else's. The keywords you're targeting are different than anyone else's. You have to just go in there and test everything. Put on your scientist cap, your data scientist, and just start collecting data, look at the data, and make decisions based on that on what to do. Otherwise, it's fairly simple. It's, adjust your bids if it's not performing well, and increase your bids if they're performing super well. And then as you add the budget, again, these additional things like adding more keywords, more campaigns, more products.
Yeah, is that one of the common things that people get wrong about ads, especially if they're starting out? Like the fact of which bid does it have to be? When do I have to optimize? Because I get those questions sometimes as well, and it's hard to say. And I understand it, because if you're starting out, you're probably going to spend, I don't know, $5, $10, $20, and you might not even get a sale. So then your first impression of ads is, well, it's a waste of money. But it's over time, when you get the data, like you said, where you can optimize and you can actually become profitable. What would you say are like some of the most common misconceptions?
Well, you've kind of hit on it, is seeing it as a waste of money. The biggest problem that I see with people that are new to PPC or pay-per-click advertising is not seeing it as an investment. You're investing in the data that you're collecting. What isn't working is just as valuable as finding out what is working, because you can now eliminate that. So it's not seeing that as a waste of money, that I just lit my money on fire because I didn't get any sales. You're not seeing that data as that investment or as data itself. Okay, now you've eliminated what doesn't work, whether it's for this product, these search terms don't work, or this product isn't selling. That's useful data just as much as what is working. So I would say that's the biggest overall issue. And that kind of leads into a bunch of different, things that new advertisers make. It's just like, that's the overarching theme, is that they're not looking at this as an investment. So they're going to not invest enough into ads. They're going to turn off their advertising too soon before they collected enough data to even make a decision one way or another. And that's probably the worst mistake that you can possibly make, because you didn't get enough data to know if something's working. Let's say, you got 10 clicks on one search term for one product, and you just see, I just wasted $5 or $10 and I just lit that money on fire. You literally did, because you stopped it before you could determine whether that search term isn't even working. Maybe the next click would have been an order and you have no idea, and you just, you literally threw that money away. So it's more about collecting enough data too, and it ties back to, again, not seeing that data as an investment.
Yeah. On that topic then, when is it time to actually kill an ad? Because like you said, 10 clicks without sale, yeah, that's probably too early. But when do you know, right, this has been going on for too long, these have to be turned up?
So when it comes to like ads, I'm going to separate this to like lottery campaigns and then like your single ASIN campaign structure. So like lottery campaigns, if anyone's not familiar, it's just a ton of products in a single ad group inside of a campaign. So you might have 100,000, 10,000 products targeting all sorts of different things in there. On that level, you're killing actual ads because you're going to have a bunch of different ads. Versus your single ASIN campaigns, you have one ad inside of an ad group. You're not targeting multiple ads with it. So I'm not going to kill ads in those single ASIN structures, but I'll get to that in a second. On the lottery campaigns, it really depends on how aggressive you want to be. So I'm going to look at my ads to inside of a lottery campaign and just see how they're performing. But I'm basing it, if you don't have orders, you need to base it off clicks. There's a bit of a hierarchy of the data that you're using to make decisions. If you have orders, you're going to use orders, which is through ACoS, to make decisions on what you should do, whether that's pausing, bid changes. You're using your order data. If you don't have order data, you have to use the next best set of data, which is clicks. If you don't have clicks, the next best set of data is impressions. But really, that's just going to be impressions itself is, for the most part, just, do I have impressions? No. Okay, I need to increase bids. I have impressions. Yeah. I'm probably fine.
Makes sense.
And then once you have clicks, you're basing off that. If I have an ad that has a couple orders, I'm pretty much never going to eliminate that unless it's performing really poorly.
So let's say, for example, it's at 2 orders, but an entire month long you've been spending money on it and nothing's happened.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's kind of a judgment call of what you're willing to put into that and see if it turns around. I guess lottery campaigns are a little bit different because they're stuck in that campaign with it's sharing a bid with all these other ads. So you may, if it is something that's getting orders instead of pausing it, it may be something worth exploring as its own single ASIN campaign so you have more control over those bids. Maybe it just needs a little bit lower bid than what it's sharing with all those other ads. For the most part, we're going to be looking at stuff that just never sold. It's going to be getting clicks, and it didn't get any orders out of those clicks. I would say with lottery campaigns on a product level, the ad level, maybe 20 clicks would be a good threshold or so. The more data you get, the more confident you can be in that decision. So if you want to wait till 25 clicks, that's even better. You're going to spend a little bit more money, but you're going to be more confident in that decision that you're making the right one. Again, the worst thing you could do is make that decision too early where you don't have enough data to be able to come and say, okay, this isn't working. But 20 clicks on ads is probably okay.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to single ASIN, this is probably where the bulk of the optimization is going to be as you get further into your advertising career. At that level, one of the biggest mistakes I see as well is making decisions on a campaign level or an ad group level where you're looking at the campaign as a whole and saying, oh, it's got, X amount of clicks and maybe no orders. I'm just going to turn off this campaign. That's a big mistake. All of your optimization on a single ASIN campaign should be happening at the targeting level. So that's goes campaign, and then inside campaigns, you have your ad groups, which inside your ad groups, you have your targeting. So this is the targeting level. These are the keywords you're targeting, the product targets that you're targeting, and category targeting too, if you're into that. You should be optimizing on that level. So you're looking for an auto campaign. It's the loose match, close match, complements. You're looking at each of those individually. Because if you're just looking at your campaign level, it could be that all of your clicks are happening on one targeting group or one keyword, and the other ones aren't getting any clicks. So you just turn off the whole campaign without even giving those other two a chance. Or let's say you do have orders like, well, I got 5 orders. I'm running at 100% ACoS. Like, this looks terrible. If you turn that off, like you could, without looking at the granular data, it could be one targeting group or one keyword that's causing it to look super bad. It's, taking all the clicks, which could even just be from one search term. Maybe there's this one search term that's taking all of your clicks, and you actually have some other ones that are running at a really good ACoS. So that's why you need to look at that level. So I'm evaluating each of those individually, each targeting group, each keyword. So we're going to make decisions on when to kill an ad at the targeting level. So we're not killing an ad per se as we're killing targets, so keywords and targeting groups for automatic campaigns. And for a campaign, if it'll eventually like pause itself if you run through all of its keywords, or in an automatic campaign, if you end up pausing all the targeting groups, you effectively pause a campaign in that method. But otherwise, we're evaluating each of those targeting groups individually. And if it's got at least 2 orders, I'm pretty much never pausing that keyword or targeting group unless it's like something really extreme. But that's kind of an edge case. Otherwise, you're using the bid to adjust how that's performing. Outside of 2 orders or more, we're going to use clicks for that. And how many clicks I want before I pause something is going to be based on how broad of targeting it is. The more broad the targeting is, so broad match or automatic targeting groups, especially that can target hundreds, thousands of different search terms, I want a lot more clicks than what I would want for an exact match targeting, where it's targeting, a couple different search terms versus hundreds or thousands. Because if you have, let's say, 20 clicks on a broad match and 20 clicks on an exact match, all those 20 clicks are going to be pretty much for the exact same search term. That's a pretty good set of data you can base it off of. That's saying 20 clicks on a broad match keyword, that might be 20 clicks on 20 different search terms. So 1 click each, where it doesn't really give you that much. So I want more clicks for that. Broad match, automatic targeting group, I want probably about 40 clicks or so is around my threshold. Again, the more you have, the better. I'm fairly conservative when it comes to pausing things. I want to really test it. I want to know for sure that this isn't really working. And then for an exact match, it's closer to that 20 range. And then phrase kind of in between there. So you'll need to get a feel for what really works for you. Again, the more data you have, the better. You can always do things like lowering your bid too as you start getting more clicks, so that it's not costing you as much money.
Yeah, makes sense. So when it starts to work and the ACOS is quite high, just lower the bid so it's not burning through as much.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a random question, but it's something that always popped into my mind with ads is, what would happen if you just turned off all of the ads for a month? Do you think, like especially with some of your bestsellers, do you think you would lose all that rank? Or do you sometimes think maybe I could turn them off and it would still organically as well?
Sometimes I do think about it, especially when I, some high spend, high ACOS days, like, is this really doing much? I think it depends on the type of campaigns. I think I'd see the most immediate impact on lottery campaigns, since those are products that don't really have ranking. They're very long tail for a lot of the stuff I'm in. So I think I'd see a decrease in the variety of products I'm selling just off the board. That probably wouldn't be as impactful necessarily on profit. When it comes to like my best sellers that have a ton of history and a ton of ranking on a lot of different search terms, there probably wouldn't be a super immediate effect. I'd probably, be more profitable on a daily basis. It would be more of a long-term creep where those competitors start getting the sales that I would have gotten perhaps with those ads. They're filling my ad spots instead of me being there, which they start ranking up. I start slowly decreasing in ranking. So over time, I would lose my ranking to where, those products could eventually fall into obscurity. You see this, you can find product with thousands of reviews that no longer really sell. They're BSRs in the millions. That's why I use ads. Ads are just as important for maintaining your rank. Just because you're already ranked number 1 doesn't mean you just want to let your foot on the gas. I don't want to give up that number 1 spot. I also have tons of copycats. God knows how many I have, thousands probably of my best sellers. It competes against those as well. Even though I'm priced at a higher price point than most of those are, I have the reviews. People are going to trust that, and I'm just going to show for a lot more. I'm going to have just so much more traffic than what any of these other competitors are. So that ranking is super important. And this is so important to understand with Amazon ads, is how much traffic goes to that first row of listings. They probably soak up 90% of what the impressions are, or the clicks are, to the rest of the page. It's really an exponential growth. It looks like a hockey stick if you look at a graph. A number 1 ranked product might get 1,000 clicks in a day, and the next second one might get 100. The third one's getting 10. And then after that, you're getting just hardly anything. So the sales are very exponential at the top. And until you really get to that level, you don't really understand just how many potential sales there are when you rank, especially in those higher competitive niches that it is worth spending the money to rank over time on that.
So you mean, for example, 10,000 BSR is not getting half the sales of a 5,000 BSR necessarily? Like as an example, you would expect
it's probably less than half. Yeah, it's probably less than half, honestly.
Yeah, it goes up exponentially towards the end, like a compound effect. But what you were saying there as well, like letting your foot off the gas, I guess it's kind of like with your ads that are doing so well for the best sellers. If you're the first in the race, if you're in front, like obviously you could slow down and use less gas and be safer, but you get caught up eventually. Whereas
it's a risk.
You're keeping the foot on the throttle, even though you might not necessarily need to right now, but it gives you that safety that you'll actually stay there. I suppose that's it with turning off ads, isn't it? In terms of viewer questions, I had, because I did ask in my community what people are wondering about ads, someone asked about substitutes and complements, because for them, they seem to usually be a waste of money. He basically said, when would you want to bid high for substitutes or complements? Am I wasting an opportunity by turning those off?
Complements, I would say probably not. That's one targeting group that just, for at least merch on demand products, don't seem to get any traction whatsoever, if you even get any impressions or clicks at all. Most of mine don't. I'm not saying it's probably something you want to test periodically though, because that could change overnight. It could change. If you're not a merch on demand seller, maybe they do work. I don't sell other products, so I don't know. But for merch on demand specifically, compliments, I'm usually turning off just out the gate, and I don't feel like I'm missing much. Substitutes, those can work. I have substitute campaigns and substitute just within other by itself. So like a campaign with just substitutes running when I segment them. And I have other ones where it's with other ones. They can still work. And when you increase your bid is when they're working. So if they're meeting your ACoS goals, or it's your the ACoS is under your target ACoS, that's when you're increasing bids. So this is why I've kind of been leading up to, is you're making these decisions based on the data you're getting. So if it's hitting your goals, increase the bid. But otherwise, you should absolutely be testing substitute campaigns. They can spend a lot. I've had substitute campaigns not perform well at all and just spend a ton of money without conversions. But in other cases, they've far surpassed even my close match and loose match. So it really just depends on the product. And you don't really know until you test it. So you need to test it.
Yeah, I can definitely test to that. I can't ever remember looking at compliments and seeing a good result. Like I've only been running ads
any
for
results.
A year,
I don't know what the deal is with them.
Maybe like one click or two, but nothing else. Whereas substitutes, sometimes don't really do much, but I have got campaigns that are doing really well with substitutes. So that's definitely worth testing out. Someone else asked what to do about the AMS data that expires in 65 days.
That's a good question. So that's data you pay for. You want to have it. So at the very least, save the data. So download the spreadsheet for the last 65 days. So for search terms, you can't go back further than 65 days. Once it's gone, you lose that data. And it's so important. This search term data, for one, it's useful for your advertising itself. So how we've talked about with these campaign structures and graduating keywords. The other thing that really gets overlooked with search term data is using it for product development. Go into your search term reports and see what people are actually searching for. This is Amazon telling you there's customers searching for these things. You can see how much traffic that they get. And the newer reports, the impression share reports, can even tell you, give you an idea of the overall traffic, if you're especially handy with some spreadsheets, because it's giving you your ranking versus everyone else. It has your impressions, so you can kind of back up that data to get overall traffic for these impression share ones. But it's information you can use, and I've used it to develop new products. And I saw, I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. I can make a t-shirt around this, or whatever products that you're in. You can use that data to, create varieties or brand new products in general. So it's super valuable data. So at the worst case, download those. I think you can schedule a report for it to You can actually, because I did a video on this on my channel. You can have it scheduled just every month. It'll just download the report for you. If you're a Mershar user, for example, we store your data for life for as long as you're a subscriber. So you always have access to your search term data. And it's convenient because you don't have to end up combining reports. Or if you want, one way I just use that data, for example, is June's coming up. It's a big month for me with Father's Day. I'm able to go back to last June's data to see what search terms work, what keywords work, what my cost per click was during that month. So I can prepare ahead of time by increasing my bids to at least be what the cost per click was during these high sales periods for the ones that worked last year. They'll probably have to be a little higher this year because ad costs keep going up, but it gives me a nice baseline that I can go back and look that I don't have that ability in Ad Console at all. I can look at lifetime data, but if I want to get granular, and same thing with Christmas coming up, I want to look at last holiday sales results to see what the best search terms were performing for my top products. I can turn those into their own campaigns, target those specifically. I can, again, look at all the data I had with my keywords. So it's super valuable data, but worst case, download those reports month by month. You can combine them and do all sorts of pivot tables and stuff, but it is a lot of data too. So it, have a good computer if you're spending a lot on ads.
Can get overwhelming. And the last question that someone asked is, at what point do you recommend actually switching to Merchjar?
I would say it makes sense to switch to Merchjar when you're spending a lot of time, if you're spending a few hours a week or more optimizing your ads, doing these sort of routine tasks that can be automated. So the moving of keywords around and specifically like pausing the campaigns or targeting level, not campaigns. We're pausing at the targeting level and optimizing bids. If you want to have that done and save hours, that's when it's a good time to switch. And it really depends on how you value your time too. Merchjar starts at $50 per month for you to access all of its tools, and $2,000. You can spend up to $2,000 a month in ad spend for that $50. And then it's just a small percentage after that. So it's pretty reasonable. So if you're saving hours per week and you value your time, that's when I would switch.
Yeah. And I suppose it does the optimization properly, like the right way, whereas a lot of beginners might not know exactly where or might miss some stuff. So it's not just saving your time, it's also doing it exactly the right way.
It can help, definitely. So we have one of our main automation systems is called Recipes. You can write your own crazy code and stuff to query your data in all sorts of fun ways. We've wrote our own starter recipes to cover 80% of your automation or your advertising tasks that you should be doing every week. The increasing bids, lowering bids, getting more impressions on stuff that isn't, pausing those targets that aren't working, and then it segments by those date ranges that we talked about, so you don't have to mess with that. It's doing all that for you, and that's all set up so you can automate that stuff in seconds. And then I've to put together videos for campaign structure and how to set that up on how I'm doing it myself with those auto testing performance campaigns, and walks you through how to set that up so you have a good structure going for your products as well.
I suppose if you're starting out and you've got 2 or 3 campaigns, it doesn't really make much sense.
No. This is really more for people that are, if we're looking at like a dollar amount, like you're probably spending $300, $400, $500 a month on ads already. If you're not, you probably don't have that many campaigns, or if you do, you're probably doing too much with your ads for the $20 a month that you're spending. Like there's no reason to have 100 different campaigns. Shrink that up and invest more into 2 or 3 products instead.
Makes sense. All right, that's all my questions. So much valuable information there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me on. This was great.
I hope people could learn something from this. I definitely learned something from it. And how can people find you or learn more from you?
Merchjar.com if you're interested in checking out our software. Otherwise, we have our YouTube channel, which will probably be a link down below. And we have a Facebook group dedicated to Amazon advertising education. It's called Amazon Ads University. We'll put a link there too. So that's a great place to learn from thousands of other advertisers as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll put all of those links in the description if anyone wants to learn even more about ads. And once again, thanks for your time. Really fun having you on. And yeah, see you in the next episode.